Hi, Tim Kerin here from Mortgage Choice in Kingsley. Today I'm here to talk about divorce or separation, the ending of a relationship, and what that means when it comes to your home loan and your home and your assets. The first and most important thing to understand is that this is the sort of thing I help people through, unfortunately, all the time, and it's a regular thing I find myself doing for people. And so I'm very familiar with the process. I'm familiar with how things work with a consent order at the family court and so forth, and how stamp duty works. And the typical situation that you might be in if you're the person in the relationship that wants to keep the house, potentially keep the kids going to the same school and all of that sort of thing. The most important thing is to understand that I'm here to help, and you can just call me and have a chat to me about the situation you're in, and I'll be able to walk you through the process of what you need to do. The second thing though is I'll try and break that down a little bit today so you have an idea of what this looks like. First of all, the important thing to figure out before we can really decide how things are going to work in terms of a home loan, the important thing to decide is how the assets are going to be split. So you and your ex-partner or soon-to-be ex-partner need to figure out if one of you is going to end up with the house, what's the other one going to end up with? And critically, if you're the person that is going to end up with the house, you need to be able to take over any remaining home loan debt there is secured against it, and any extra money you're going to need to borrow to pay out your partner so that their name can come off the title. That's typically the calculation we see. And that depends on whether you're going to split the assets 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, and so forth. And that's the sort of thing to discuss. Now, you don't need to have figured that out in order to have a conversation with me. Plenty of the time I find myself having a conversation with someone before they've figured that out so that they know what they're capable of. And so what tends to come first is if we can figure out what home loan amount you're capable of servicing, then you know your upper limit on what you can do. If you can service enough debt to take over what's left of the home loan and any further money that you need to pay out your partner, if anything, then we know that it's possible. If we figure out what you are capable of servicing, then that determines potentially what all the other options are. So you don't necessarily want to go too far through the process without first figuring out what you're capable of as a home loan. That can, in some situations, dictate everything else. So it's important to get it out of the way first. If you go through the process of what's called a consent order at the Family Court of Western Australia, you end up with a document called a consent order, which says who the new owner of the property is going to be, which one of you is going to end up with the property, and perhaps how much you need to pay the other person to do that, perhaps whether one of you is getting some of the other person's super, any cars being transferred, anything else like that happens. If you have that document, a consent order, that's the court ordering a transfer of assets to happen, and that allows you to get the stamp duty waived. So if you don't have that document and you're going to buy your ex out of their part of the house, then you would otherwise effectively be treated as a buyer like any normal transaction, and the buyer has to pay stamp duty. In other words, if you can get a consent order sorted out through the family court, then you don't have to pay the stamp duty on the transaction, and that can save you thousands. So you don't have to do a consent order, but it is a good way of saving yourself a decent amount of money when you're going through the process. So we can talk about that too, and I can give you an idea of how much stamp duty you could decide to pay in order to not have to go through the consent order process. Because it is an in-depth process where one of you fills in the form as the applicant, the other fills in the form as a respondent, and if both of you agree on the figures, then the court approves it. It doesn't mean you need to go and sit in court together and fight it out with lawyers. That's a last resort. If you both submit the form filled out agreeing on what you've already agreed on, every time I've ever seen that happen, the court simply agrees. They can see that neither party is doing the wrong thing by the other in terms of the asset split, and they approve it. And then we have the document we need to then go and apply for a home loan to make it actually happen. So that's roughly how the process works. And once again, the main point is, if you're considering this, if you're considering what might happen if your relationship has unfortunately failed, what might happen to the family home, whether that's something you want to keep or not, whether you're able to keep it, the first thing to do is contact me so we can go through the numbers together, go through your situation and see what it's going to look like. Look at any maintenance income you might be receiving or might be going to receive. Look at any Centrelink income you might receive if you haven't been the main breadwinner in the relationship and your partner is. I've dealt with all of that sort of thing plenty of times, and I can help you figure out what that's going to mean going forward. And at the very least, from a chat, you'll know what your limitations are and what's possible, and then you can go into your negotiation with a bit more understanding of what you're capable of. I hope that helps. There's plenty more to talk about, and the reality is that everybody's situation is different. So in a situation like this, my team and I are well and truly versed with and equipped with everything we need to be able to help you through that process, and customise what we do to your specific situation and look after you. It is possible as well for us to use the discretion we have to deal with both parties. If you and your partner each need to end up with something and both of you need to get a home loan to do it, we can do that and make sure that each person's private business is their own. We've done that from time to time too, and we're fine with that. So whatever we can do to help you is the most important thing, because we understand it's already a stressful enough situation. The last thing you need is to be stressing about the home loan as well. Anyway, that's enough for now. If you've got any more questions, please feel free, as always, to get in contact. Thanks.